Which is all $2. That's all we end up. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 multiple guess, okay? No true and false. There's one fill in the blank, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4 fill in the blanks. That's the whole thing. It's 31 questions, it's worth 50 points. So I think everybody will do fine. Again, the worksheets are the key.
So whenever I was going through the PowerPoints and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
attempting to study for this,
Yeah.
for different, like, so like for fats and like for carbs, there's like different organizations that recommend different
Yeah.
intakes of that.
Yeah.
Do we need to know every single one? Or
No.
is there like one specific one that you're going off of?
Yeah, let me just look and see. I mean, so that there are things like, okay, how much carbohydrates do you need? Okay, but not like what is the, you know,
Recommended intake? Or
yeah, I mean they're all recommended intakes. Like, so you need to know fiber, what that is. You need to know what carbohydrates that is. There is one question on here where you have to use your calculator to figure out some, you have to calculate one thing about, what is this in particular? It's about fat. So, and let's see. No, there's really nothing that says you have to, what is the IU for the international, medicine say, is recommended for this, nothing like that.
Okay.
Will you give partial credit for short answers if it's not complete?
Yes, always do. They're normally worth like a couple, 3 points or whatever, so. What we do is identify like 3 key points that has to be in the answer. And if you hit 2 of them, you get 2 points. If you hit 1, you get 1 point. So it's not all or nothing. What other stressors do you guys have?
No, the 2 other examples.
What's that?
I said the 2 other examples, you have those people said that one.
Oh, you guys, I know, I'm sorry.
You could, it's fine, it's just the way it was.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. It's the way everything played out, and then, so here's what we were going to do. We were going to, because we actually cut a lot of the PowerPoints in the discussion short because we wanted to get through the material. So what we're thinking, well, we could just bring them back from break and have them do a midterm. Well, yeah, that's not going to work. So who wants to study on their break? Nobody. So I figured that would be not good. So we figured, okay, before or after break, and it's like, man, let's just do it before break. So, and every other teacher probably thought the same thing. So, yeah, same thing with finals. But I try to do it most of my classes. If I have presentations and projects, I try to do it before finals week, like a couple weeks before finals, just to kind of, separate it out a little bit so you guys aren't blasted on that 1 week. Because I think that's kind of stupid in general, is just to blast you guys on 1 week. I went through it, I did it, I know what it feels like, and I don't know. I don't think it's the best way to learn, but it's the current format.
Do you, will you tell us which day we have our presentations when we get back?
Yeah, I think we've already decided, and I believe it's on Blackboard.
Oh, it is?
I think it is. Yeah, we did a random selection. So, but if there's a problem, we can still switch it. What we did last year is we just had people sign up, and then that didn't go well. So we just decided we'll do random selection, and that's what we did. But if you can't be there due to sports or whatever, then we need to know. So we need to switch that.
So whatever we did at the beginning of the semester, the first day, disregard that? Because I thought we signed up for a day, or we were given a day.
Not a day. You signed up for like the diet presentation. You signed up for a particular diet with a group.
So we signed up for a snack.
Yeah, snacks you did. So that you'll be bringing your snack on the day you signed up.
For some reason, I thought we were doing our presentation that same day.
Mm-hmm.
No?
No. Presentations weren't assigned yet. We haven't signed population presentation either. So we've got to do that too. you need a video? Do you need to do anything? No, you're just gonna talk, okay.
Yeah.
Come on up, Justin, do.
Oh.
Yes,
Do we have
question?
a worksheet due on Wednesday?
I don't think so, I think we got everything done. Yeah, I think we're good.
Cool.
I think you guys got enough to do just with the exam. I do have to say, and I'm not trying to scare you, you know, last year 50% of the people failed the midterm. So, and we gave quizzes every week. So when we got done with proteins, we gave a quiz to kind of prep them to get ready. So we did quizzes every week. We decided to get rid of quizzes because it was too redundant. So we just did midterm instead of final. And we're gonna see how it goes this year, so you guys don't have as much busy work. But we didn't have a good pass rate.
Can you put like a rough study guide online? Cause I know like all the worksheets we have, there's a lot and there's a lot covered, so like we could just be studying like the wrong things completely.
Yeah.
Like it,
Or just make it an online test.
That would be fine with me.
So I could make it an open book test, and then it would be like 200 questions, and it would be a long test, and it would be like you'd have like 20 seconds per question. And yeah, that wouldn't be fun. So this is, I don't think it's as hard as you think, but it's, you know, I'm just telling you in the past, people didn't take it seriously, and they thought it's blow off nutrition, not a big deal, and 50% failed. So we don't have quizzes this year, so you don't have extra point from quizzes. So if you don't do well in the midterm, it's probably gonna affect your grade, just to let you know. But I mean, presentations will help, and you know, you get points for worksheets and all that stuff. So
you think like the people who failed last year, they just didn't study?
they didn't study.
Okay,
They blew it off.
okay.
They just thought, well, we took the quizzes, and we told them that everything that was on the quizzes or on the midterm, and they just didn't study. That's what I think. So if you put even a little time into it, I think this won't be that hard. We didn't make trick questions on here or anything. It's pretty straightforward off the worksheet. So yeah, and multiple guess should be, yeah. And there's two obvious no's,
Right.
and there's a 50-50 on the other two. So that's just standard multiple choice.
Okay.
And Dr. Ulrich is very lenient when it comes to making exams. So she's like, we fought back and forth on that because I said, no, we need to make it harder. She says, no, we're not doing that. So she won out on most everything. So you know, I think she's pretty lenient. She's really lenient. And students like her a lot better than me, typically. So anyway. Okay, what am I doing here? We're moving forward. Oh no, we're doing a Devo. Sorry, my bad. I know she's like, let me get out of your way.
Okay, so basically I was thinking about life and like how much we make excuses in life, like myself and the people around me. And so I found a Christian article about excuses, and I just kind of want to like read some of the like takeaways I took from it. The first line was, "Isn't an excuse just a little white lie the enemy uses to blindfold us and keep us in mediocrity?" And then it like goes on to tell a story about a mom who like made excuses for her son and why he didn't do well on tests, which made him not do well in school, and basically just made him have an excuse to fail. And then it goes in to say, excuses in our lives give us permission to settle for less than God's best. It seems we always have an excuse for our shortcomings. We always have something or someone else to blame for our less than stellar lot in life. It is never our fault. We continuously brand our insecurities through seemingly justifiable alibis. We declare this is how it always is for us, for our families. We inhale the status quo and exhale the mundane. And then it goes into talking about how closed doors don't always mean no. Most of the time they mean that God has a bigger and better door. We must move forward and keep knocking. And then it says, Matthew 7:7, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be open to you. It says we get so immersed in the past and caught up in old technicalities, we can't see hope staring at us through the dirty windows of our own self-appointed limitations. We are confined only by the walls we build ourselves, which I thought was like really big. Like all of our excuses just build up walls to cover our insecurities when like really we should just embrace those and try to better ourselves. And it goes on to say, if you speak life into your situation and speak faith into your circumstances, the favor of God and the blessing of heaven will chase you down when you stop excusing them away. Success will ultimately come to you when your dreams become bigger than your excuses. And then it says, Jeremiah 1:4-10, now the word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations. Then I said, Lord God, behold, I do not know how to speak, for I am only a youth. But the Lord said to me, do not say, I am only a youth, for to all to whom I send you, you shall go, and whatever I command you, you shall speak. Do not be afraid of them, for I am with you to deliver you, declares the Lord.
So I don't know all your names because I'm too busy, because I have too many patients to treat, because I have too many students to teach. Jess, what is that? Okay, so excuses stop you from being vulnerable. Okay? Excuses are this wall saying, hey, this is the reason why I'm failing at this, or this is the reason why I'm doing something. And I have to agree with you, that is, excuses are just people not being honest with themselves and being vulnerable. So, me being vulnerable, I should know all your names. It's been 3 weeks. You guys made that very clear. I was embarrassed. And so I'm being vulnerable right now by saying, I have to live what I talk about. I mean, I talk to you about vulnerability, well, I need to live it now. So this has been on my mind for like 4 days now, or like 3 days. It's like, so I'm making a real strong point to do this because I was thinking back to my teachers, and the ones that I remember, they always called me by my first name, and they always knew my name, and I had that personal relationship with them. So me being vulnerable, not making excuses, I need to, and I will. And by the time we get back from break, I will know all your names, and hopefully I'll have stories to go with it. So please, when you're making excuses, think about why you are, like Jess was talking about. It is okay to be vulnerable. I was just vulnerable right now. And did that make you all hate me more? Hope not. Maybe. And the ones that hate me now because of that, you're all narcissists, and I don't like you anyway. So, so anyway, yeah, it's okay to be vulnerable, and you don't need to make excuses. And people, when you make excuses, I mean, sometimes that drives people away. And and when you don't, sometimes you draw closer to them because you're just being real. Let's say a quick prayer and get started with our fun. Our Father in heaven, we bow our head and we give thanks for this day. We give thanks for very wonderful Devo by Justin, just reminding us that, hey, listen, we just need to be vulnerable. We need to be open and be honest with you and with other people and just live that way. And help us to be aware when we're not, and so we can work on that and progress towards that. Everything's a progression. It's not about perfection, and help us all to wrap our minds around that too. I'm so thankful for our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and Him coming to this earth just to teach us, to be our rabbi and to be our Savior. We're thankful for that. We say this in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, so this is the last lecture. Mostly, I think we have a lecture, like there may be 2 other lectures, but our lecture format goes away after this, okay? Then we get into our presentations, and we get into a lot more doing rather than me talking to you. So this was the rough part. February was the rough part. Okay, so let's move into my presentation, which I have no idea where it's at. Okay. So we're going to get into minerals, water, and electrolytes. And really, we don't have a lot that we're covering. It's basically calcium, iron, sodium, potassium, water. So out of all the minerals that we could have picked, those are the ones that I'm going to lecture on today. And those are the ones that will be on the midterm. So, hint, hint. Oh, and another thing. Oh man, this was huge over the weekend. Again, me being my nerdy self, I was, on the internet checking things, and I've got to answer a few questions. Who asked questions last time that I couldn't answer? Vitamin D and vitamin K. Okay, I know they do work together for clotting, and I have no idea why physiologically. So I'm still trying to figure out the physiology behind that, and once I know, I'll let you know. So I didn't forget about it. I couldn't come up with any quick answers on that. The other one was, what was it? Daily value and yeah, the RDI or the RDA. Okay, so what's the difference between those two? Two different organizations. One is the FDA, which is the daily value. The other one is the, what is it, the International Association of Medicine or something like that. Bless you. Which is the DRI. So just two different organizations. That's why there's two different names. That's it. So I'm sorry it wasn't more sexy and exciting, but that's it. That's it. Yeah, I was expecting a little bit different answer, but nope. Okay.
Did you ever end up doing the podcast with your daughter?
I did.
How did it go?
It was 2 hours of non-stop talking. Yeah, we went into a lot of really crazy things. We went into how we should develop a church. Are you trying to not have me lecture today? Is that what we're trying to do here?
No, I was just curious because I keep remembering it every class that I have with you, and then I was just curious because I
Yes.
do it every day.
So, she's from a very conservative church. So, and it's very male dominated, and the males normally are a little bit narcissistic, and it's very rule oriented and gender oriented. So she struggles with that because she's very liberal. So that's been a crazy trip for her. So we went into how we need to make our church. So how does that look? How do we change the church? What do we do? What's the future look like? And we went into all of it. And it took us 2 hours to kind of come up with, yeah, we fixed the world. But it's not that easy because it gets very complicated because you throw out the traditional church with a speaker, with a preacher up there preaching at you, kind of like what I'm doing, or do you get into like back in, like the Jewish synagogues, they had one person got up and then presented something and then they all discussed it. I mean, which she was in favor of. But then if you have one person that's presenting or bringing a meeting together, then you have there's certain people in the group that can take and run with the meeting and put their own personal views, which may have nothing to do with the truth of Scripture. So it got really complicated, and it was really good. But she did tell me she talked about it with her friends on Friday. She talks to her dad about all kinds of things that are spiritual and deep stuff, and her friends were really jealous that their dads didn't do that. So what I got out of it was that I guess this is a lot cooler than I thought it was. So yeah, it was a lot cooler than I thought it was. So it'll be something that we can remember forever. All right, so we'll wait for this to come up. No, we don't need to. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about minerals, water, and electrolytes. And we'll be covering, like I said, calcium, iron, sodium, and potassium. So calcium. And, oh shoot. I need to be a little more organized, sorry guys. I did find, this is where the apology is going to come in, okay, because I learned some stuff over the weekend. And I'm going to show you a video, and if I can find it right there. Let me stop it before we go. Okay, right there, we'll come back to that. Okay, so calcium is a mineral, and it's important. And everybody knows it's for building bones. It helps with the bone structure. So it also is important for blood clotting. So clotting requires the calcium ions. So not only does it require D, it requires calcium, it requires vitamin K. So we have a lot of different things in calcium. So this will be important for us in the medical field when we're thinking about our patients. Do they have these nutrients to help with clotting? So hopefully you'll be able to take this with you. Also, it's important for muscles and for muscle contraction. So here's what happens and why calcium is important. When the brain signals the muscles to contract, the body pulls calcium from the blood into the muscle cells. Okay? This calcium binds with tropin and draws out, let's see, tropin and draws it out of position. When the tropin and the tropomyosin move, this activates the actin and myosin to move toward each other and contract the muscle and create a muscle contraction. So we need this calcium to create the muscle contraction. Okay? It also regulates heartbeat because because it works with the neurotransmission in the neurons around the heart. So, where's most of the calcium in our body? Bones in the teeth. Okay, so remember what I talked about when we're acidic, what the body will do to balance out the acidity in the body? What did I tell you guys? What was the buffer? Okay, it was the bones. So when you look at most, when I looked at a lot of videos over the weekend, because I do this stuff, and most of them supported this, but then I found one that didn't support it. So I wanted to show it to you, because I think it's pretty powerful. So sit back and enjoy this, because this blows my whole theory right here, okay? Here we go.
For most of the last century, a prevailing theory within the field of nutrition was that by eating acid-forming foods, such as meat, we were, in essence, at risk of peeing our bones down the toilet. And no wonder. Experiments dating back to 1920 showed over and over that if you add meat to the diet, you get a big spike in the amount of calcium being lost in the urine. And so this made total sense. We had known since 1912 that meat was acid-forming within the body. How do you buffer acid? What are antacid pills? Anti-acid pills like Tums? Calcium. Meat and eggs have a lot of sulfur-containing amino acids, 2 to 5 times more than grains and beans, that are metabolized into sulfuric acid, which the body buffers with calcium. That's why the antacids like Tums are made out of calcium. Calcium can buffer acid. And where is calcium stored in the body? The skeleton. So the thinking was that every time we ate a steak, our body would pull calcium from our bones bit by bit, and over time this could lead to osteoporosis. Based on 26 such studies, every 40 grams of protein we add to our daily diet, we pee out an extra 50 milligrams of calcium. And look, we only have about 2 pounds of calcium in our skeleton, so the loss of 50 a day would mean losing close to 2% of our bone calcium every year. And so by the end of the 20th century, there was little doubt that acid-forming diets would dissolve our bones away. But if you actually look at all the studies done on protein intake and bone health, that's not what you find. So where's the flaw in our logic? Right? Meat leads to acid, which leads to calcium loss, which leads to bone loss, right? Well, it's uncontroversial that protein results in greater calcium excretion. But we've just been assuming it's coming from the bone. I mean, where else could the extra calcium dumped in our urine be coming from but from our bones? This is the study that appeared to solve the mystery. An intrepid group of researchers tried feeding a bunch of volunteers radioactive calcium and then putting them on a high-protein diet. What happens when you put people on a high-protein diet? The amount of calcium in their urine shoots up. And indeed, that's just what happened. But here's the big question. Was that extra calcium in their urine radioactive or not? And to everyone's surprise, it was radioactive. Meaning that the excess calcium in the urine was coming from their diet. Remember, they're feeding them radioactive calcium. So the excess calcium in their urine wasn't coming from their bones, but from what they were eating. What seemed to be happening is that the excess protein consumption boosted calcium absorption from down around 19% up to 26%. So all of a sudden there was all this extra calcium in the blood, so presumably the kidneys are like, whoa, what are we gonna do with it all? So they dump it in the urine. 90% of the extra calcium in the urine after eating a steak doesn't appear to be coming from our bones, but from our diet. We're not sure why protein boosts calcium absorption. Maybe the protein increases the solubility of calcium by stimulating stomach acid production. Whatever the reason, yes, more calcium lost, but more calcium gained such that in the end, most of that extra calcium is accounted for. So in effect, more calcium is lost in the urine stream, but may be compensated by less loss of calcium through the fecal stream. This was repeated with even more extreme diets. An acid-forming 5 burgers a day worth of animal protein diet that limited fruit and vegetables versus an alkaline diet emphasizing fruits and vegetables. More calcium in the urine on burgers, but significantly greater calcium absorption such that at the end it was pretty much a wash. Other studies have also since supported this interpretation. Here's an ingenious one. Feed people a high animal protein diet, but with an alkalized salt to neutralize the acid. Now the old thinking would predict that there would be no calcium loss since there was no excess acid to buffer. But no, even though the acid load was neutralized, there was still the excess urinary calcium consistent with the radioactive isotope study, challenging this long-standing dogma that animal protein consumption results in an acidosis that promotes the excess excretion of calcium. So if our body isn't buffering the acid formed from our diet with our bones, how is it neutralizing the acid? Maybe with our muscles. Alkaline diets may protect our muscle mass, all covered in my next video entitled Testing Your Diet with Pea and Purple Cabbage. Stay tuned.
So did anybody get anything out of that? What do we get out of it? Doesn't. Comes from your diet. Okay. So I ran that by Dr. Ulrich, and she said, "Oh my goodness, what are we going to do?" I says, "Well, why don't we just keep lying to them?" No, we're not going to do that.
So if it did come from our bones, would it be coming from like spongy bone or is it coming from?
Great question. We're going to get into that. That's a great segue for my next one. So hang on. Yeah. So now, when we do have calcium loss for extended period, our bones will then supply calcium to the body. But on a normal diet, we have plenty of calcium. So, and we're going to get to that in the slide. So this slide is in your book, and it just talks about calcium sources. Okay. So I just want to notice that the bottom half is all basically plant-based, and the top half is all basically meat and yogurt-based, or meat and dairy. Thank you, yogurt. So we can just, I mean, when we have, there's a lot of fortified like orange juice, and there's fortified milk, and there's fortified almond milk, and there's fortified stuff which provides us with a lot of calcium. So we just have to, normally our diet will supply us if we eat a good, healthy, plant-based diet, we're going to get sufficient calcium, and then if we, have the standard American diet, we're going to get plenty of calcium. So.
Dr. Z?
Yeah.
If calcium for our bones isn't being used as a acid buffer, then why are so many people developing osteoporosis?
Yeah, so that's a good question. That's a really good question. So there's a lot of reasons. We're going to get into osteoporosis in just a second here. So this is all of our dietary intake right here. So let's say we get 1,000 milligrams, which is recommended, okay? And the reason the United States has higher recommendations for minerals than the rest of the world, just because of absorption. Because there's different variations in absorption in the research. So, so in America, we tend to err on the high side of things, okay? Which isn't always good, like protein. We don't want to err 35% protein in our diet. That doesn't make sense. So we take in 1,000 milligrams, and how much is absorbed? We only have 30 milligrams absorbed normally. But let's say we have a really acidic, we have metabolic acidosis happening in our body. Then the potential for our daily calcium, all this extra calcium that's out here to be more absorbed to balance, is what's happening. This is what's happening when we eat the standard American diet. So our body can pull in all this extra calcium to balance out the acidity in our body. It's not pulled away from the bones. That's what he was saying in his video. Okay. So this just kind of goes through what happens. It gets absorbed. Blood calcium, then we sweat out 20 milligrams, or we absorb 500 to 700 milligrams in the bones, which then goes through this reabsorption and deposit stage. It's just constantly evolving. Okay. And then we can also have it filtered out through urine, which is about 35 milligrams of basically calcium. So these are all the different things that happen, okay? So, interesting fact, our skeletal system is constantly going through this reabsorption and deposit stage, okay? So every 10 years, we have a new skeleton. So just something interesting to know. So when we break a bone, how long does it take us to develop callus over the fracture area? Does anybody know? I hear whispers. Be vulnerable, throw it out there.
I think she said 6 weeks.
Okay, we'll go with that. Yeah, 4 to 6 weeks, that's when you get your callus. And then over the course of probably the next 3 to 6 months, then the callus then is absorbed and it just kind of becomes a normal looking bone after that. So that's kind of how the normal evolution after a fracture. But every 10 years we get a new skeletal system, okay? How often does our stomach lining change? How often do you think that happens? What's that? Very often, yeah. Like 7 to 10 days. Some people even say 3 days we get that exchange. So our body is constantly changing, okay? How often does it take the nervous system after it's been damaged to recover? Let's say the stroke. How long does it take a stroke person a person who's had a stroke to heal? A year? So that's 12 months? Any other guesses? They don't. Sometimes they don't. It's too much damage. The body may not have the plasticity to change enough to recuperate. Depending on, young people, they can remove half their brain and they can still, the plasticity on the other side of the brain can take over. They've done studies on this. It's really crazy. And they actually are fairly normal. But anyway, it takes about 18 months. So when you have like a peripheral nerve injury, it can take up to 18 months. So when I have people come in and say, well, I damaged the median nerve, I cut it, and they repaired it, and I still have numbness and tingling, I don't have all my strength, and it's been 3 months, and I'm worried that this is it. And I tell them, no, you got up to 18 months. Just relax. Just keep working hard. So that's what you can tell your patients too. Okay, so that was that slide. So these are risk factors. These are risk factors for osteoporosis, but we need to get into what osteoporosis is. So let me define it here a little bit. So our bones are living tissue and constantly changing. Do you know that when you go into a surgery and the doctor reveals a bone, and if he puts his thumb on the bone and then takes his thumb off the bone, you can actually see the imprint of his thumb. Okay? That's how porous the bones are. Everybody thinks that they're so rigid like an old stick. They're kind of mobile. So just to let you know that. So, okay, go back to my non-tangent thing here. So, so from the moment of birth, what's that?
No, I just had a question.
Yeah.
Like deer bones and stuff, like those are pretty hard. So like, is it just because like they're aged and not in the body that they get hard or something? Like.
Yeah, it goes back to losing the calcium deposits within the bone. When you start to lose the minerals within the bone, they just don't have the resiliency. They don't have that flexibility. Okay? So the way I describe it to patients is that if you're at the base of a tree and you look at the sticks by the base of the tree, and if one looks kind of green, you can actually tie that green stick in a knot and it won't break. But then if you take one that's been there for a while and you go to bend it, snaps. Okay? So so it's important to maintain that a little bit of mobility and flexibility, and the way we do that is we supply nutrients to the bones so they can stay healthy. So, okay, let's try doing this again. From the moment of birth until the adulthood, bones are developing and strengthening. Our bones are their most dense in the early 20s. Okay, and this is called peak bone mass. And as we age, some of our bone cells begin to dissolve, and then we have new bone cells that are depositing, and this is known as remodeling. So this is every 10 years, our bones completely remodel. So for people with osteoporosis, bone loss outpaces growth of new bone, and bone becomes porous, brittle, and prone to fracture. So due to dietary changes, due to disease processes, all these things, they can create deficiencies, and we don't have the ability to absorb those minerals into into our bones, which can make them brittle, which can then lead to osteoporosis. Also, there's some thought of how fat plays into this whole osteoporosis thing too, so, yes.
So if, since, like, we're trying to figure out, like, the bone, like, all the calcium coming from the bones, could it also be, like, people drinking, because you're big pop drinkers in America.
Yep.
And so couldn't it be, like, alcohol and, like, pop causing osteoporosis in a way?
Yeah, so we have to remember how the body works. It just, are we doing things that are helping to create homeostasis in the body? Are we doing things to take our body out of homeostasis? So if we put junk in our body, it's probably we're moving away from it. And if we're supplying with its nutrients, we're gonna help it to maintain it. So, you know, to be an alcoholic, yes, that's gonna definitely take us away from homeostasis. It's gonna deplete our body of the minerals that we need. So we have to think about what medications and, you know, what other things we're doing. I mean, if we don't exercise either, then we're not utilizing Wolff's law in the body, and our bodies don't have a need to be strong, and they become brittle too because there's not enough stress put in the body to maintain, for them to be able to absorb the minerals and the calcium and all that to build stronger bones. They don't need to be strong because we don't use them. So, and this goes down to here. So tobacco, alcohol, stress, medications, hormone status, low estrogen, low testosterone, diet, we talked about that, exercise, we talked about that. Also age does play a part, and there's a lot of reasons. As we age, we have brittle bones. I mean, we talked about a lot of these things down here create it. Or there's just a lot of times, just sudden, as we get older, we become sedentary too, so we have to, you know, watch that. So there's race and gender, and menstrual status, all these things play into this thing called osteoporosis. Okay. So now we're gonna talk about calcium and osteoporosis. Okay. Okay, so now we're talking about deficiencies in calcium and their effects on performance. So, so let's first talk about calcium deficiencies and how do we get calcium deficiencies, or how does it happen? So this can be dietary problem, decrease in exercise, low sex hormones. A lot of the things we talked about in the last slide: medications, smoking, alcohol, celiac disease, inflammatory bowel, kidney or liver disease, cancer, lupus, multiple myeloma, rheumatoid arthritis. All these things lead into calcium deficiencies, which then lead into osteoporosis. Okay. So when we have low calcium, it also creates other things too, like impaired muscle contraction, muscle cramps, and then if we don't have enough, also leads to fractures, and it also leads to decreased trabecular bone density. Okay. So let me make sure I covered everything on the slide. I think so. Yeah. Okay. Good. I do want to go into another quick video, but don't run out of time here. So I think this is important when you find out your patient has low calcium. It's like, okay, well, let's put you on a supplement. We need to make sure if you're not getting 1,000 milligrams a day, let's make sure you do. So you're gonna put them on a chronometer, right? Because you want to check to see if they've got a deficiency. We want to scientifically evaluate them, right? Or if you've got blood testing or whatever that comes back from the lab, check it. Yeah, they got low calcium. We need to put them on a supplement. Okay, so here's what we think about supplements. Or here's a viewpoint on supplements.
There has been an assumption for decades that as a natural element, calcium supplements must intrinsically be safe. But calcium supplementation is neither natural nor risk-free, but the same could be said for every medication on the planet. Yet doctors continue to write billions of prescriptions for drugs every year because the hope, at least, is that the benefits outweigh the risks. So what about the benefits of calcium supplements? Yes, heart attacks and strokes can be devastating, but so can hip fractures. The risk of dying shoots up in the months following a hip fracture. About 1 in 5 women don't last a year after a hip fracture, and it may be even worse for men. On average, apparently cutting one's lifespan short by 4 or 5 years. And unfortunately, these dismal statistics don't seem to be getting much better. So even if calcium supplements caused a few heart attacks and strokes, if they prevented many more hip fractures, then it might result in a favorable risk-benefit ratio. So how effective are calcium supplements in preventing hip fractures? We've known that milk intake doesn't appear to help, but maybe that's because any potential benefit of the calcium in milk may be overshadowed by the increased risk of fracture and death associated with the galactose sugar in milk. But what about just the calcium in a calcium supplement alone? Calcium intake in general does not seem to be related to hip fracture risk at all. And when people have been given calcium supplements, not only was there no reduction in hip fracture risk, an increased risk is possible. The randomized controlled trial suggests a 64% greater risk of hip fractures with calcium supplementation compared to just like getting a placebo sugar pill. Where did they even get this idea then that calcium supplements might help our bones? It was this influential study in 1992 that found a combination of vitamin D and calcium supplements could reduce hip fracture rates 43%. But this was done on institutionalized women, like in a nursing home, who were vitamin D deficient. They weren't getting sufficient sun exposure. And so if you're vitamin D deficient and you take vitamin D and calcium, no surprise, your bones get better. But for women living independently out in the community, the latest official recommendations for calcium and vitamin D supplementation to prevent osteoporosis is unambiguous. Do not supplement. Why? Because in the absence of compelling evidence for benefit, taking supplements is not worth any risk, no matter how small. Now, this is not to say these supplements don't play a role in treating osteoporosis or that vitamin D supplements may not be good for other things, but if you're just trying to prevent fractures, women living outside of institutions should not take them, and perhaps even in institutions. In this study, instead of giving nursing home residents vitamin D and calcium supplements, they randomized them to sunlight exposure and calcium supplements. And those that got the calcium pills had significantly increased mortality, lived shorter lives than the sunshine-only group. Although calcium supplements don't appear to prevent hip fractures, they may reduce overall fracture risk by like 10%. So here's how the risk-benefit shakes out. If 1,000 people took calcium supplements for 5 years, we would expect 14 excess heart attacks, meaning 14 people would have a heart attack that they would not have had if they had not started the calcium supplements. So they were effectively going to the store and buying something that gave them a heart attack. Plus 10 strokes that otherwise would not have happened, and 13 deaths. People would have been alive had they not started the supplements. But that's all balanced against the 26 fractures that would be prevented. Now, it's no fun falling down, breaking a wrist or something, but I think most people would look at that risk-benefit analysis and conclude that calcium supplements are doing more harm than good. Given these findings, the use of these supplements should be discouraged, and individuals advised to obtain calcium from their diet instead. Calcium supplements have been associated with elevated risk of myocardial infarction, heart attacks, whereas dietary calcium intake has not. How much calcium should we shoot for? Interestingly, unlike most other nutrients, there's no international consensus. For example, in the UK, the recommendation for adults is 700 milligrams a day. But across the pond in the US, it's up to 1,200 a day. Whenever I see that kind of huge discrepancy between government panels, I immediately think scientific uncertainty, political maneuverings, or both. Newer data based on calcium balance studies in which researchers make detailed measurements of the calcium going in and out of people suggest that the calcium requirements for men and women is lower than previously estimated. They found calcium balance was highly resistant to change across a broad range of intakes, meaning our body is not stupid. If we eat less calcium, our body absorbs more and excretes less. And if we eat more calcium, we absorb less and excrete more to stay in balance. Therefore, current evidence suggests that dietary calcium intake is not something most people need to worry about. This may explain why in most studies no relationship was found between calcium intake and bone loss anywhere in the skeleton, because the body just kind of takes care of it. Don't push it too far though. I mean, once you get down to just a few hundred milligrams a day, you may significantly get more bone loss. Though there may not be great evidence to support the US recommendations, the UK may have the right idea, shooting for between 500 and 1,000 milligrams a day from dietary sources, unless you've had gastric bypass surgery or something and need to take supplements. For most people though, calcium supplements cannot be considered safe or effective for preventing bone fractures.
Okay, so supplementation. So most people don't need it. Again, we talked about in that slide that I showed previously, this one, we have 850 milligrams that's excreted. So when we start to drop low, our body will naturally know to absorb more. That's just kind of how it works, unless we drop low for a long period of time, or unless we have some type of disease process that'll create that same situation. Okay? Does that make any sense? All right. So again, scientifically, we need to track things. I know you're getting sick of me saying that, but you need to know how much you're getting from your diet, and you need to know it, and you need to know exactly. And when you know this, then you know what you need to do. So if you're around the 200 milligrams for a month, you know you need to figure out how you're going to get more calcium either in your diet or you're going to need a supplement. Okay, now we're getting to compact bone and trabecular bone, or what I call, and I've learned, is cortical bone. So the outside part of your bone is the hard part is called cortical bone, and this is the protective part of our bone. And then the inside part is called subchondral bone, or it's called trabecular bone. And the reason it has all this porousness to it is because we have something in there called bone marrow, which produces blood cells. We also, this is the place where there's all kinds of nutrient distribution going on. Our body provides nutrients to the bone itself. So this is all the channels that it gets to, that can lead out to the cortical bone to keep it healthy. Okay? So we have subchondral bone and we have cortical bone. So normal bone, if we look at the trabeculae and the normal bone, it's kind of dense. And then as we look at osteoporotic bone, it's less dense. Okay. So how about calcium cancer, blood pressure, and weight loss? Basically, there's no evidence to support that for hypertensive individuals it helps. For weight loss, it doesn't help. But for rectal cancer, and some of them, it could help protect against it. So there's some studies that should support there's decreased risk of cancer from from increasing your calcium in your diet or from taking supplements. So we were going to read through these, but I'm just going to go through them quickly because we're running out of time. So the American Academy of Sports Medicine has 5 points for bone health. This is on page 336. So dynamic exercise, we talked about that, is going to increase bone density. You just have to know your peak bone mass is obtained during development, like up to 20. That's when you get your peak bone mass. So it's important to be active when you know, all the way up into your 20s, because your peak bone mass happens then. So you can't peak out higher than that. Also, did you know at the age of 30, you've pretty much maxed out your exercise potential too. So as far as muscle mass and as far as cardiovascular abilities, you pretty much maxed them out. So if you try to exercise when you get older and you think you can exceed what you were in your early 30s, it's probably not going to happen. So everything starts to go downhill after the age of 30-something, early 30s. Isn't that fun stuff to know? So it doesn't mean you're going to be unhealthy. It just means you peak out in your 30s, okay? And then everything kind of goes downhill from there. Okay, so then we have anorexia, which again is basically an emotional problem, and the person is focused on weight loss and they just refuse to eat. And then we have bulimia, which is, again, an obsession. It's an emotional disorder, and it's obsessing about weight loss. And then they have this overeating followed by they overeat, and then they normally go in and they cause themselves to, to throw up what they've eaten. So they go through this bulimic phase. So what happens in this phase, this when you have these disorders, it leads to these problems here. So they have increased risk of stress fractures because of low calcium, just because of decreased calorie intake. Also, they have an absence of menstrual cycle too, just because, again, they don't have nutrients in order to have it, okay? So this is called the female athlete triad. So we're gonna go through iron really quick here. Okay. So the main function of iron, basically, iron is used predominantly to help produce hemoglobin. And hemoglobin is what we need to carry oxygen to the cells. So if we don't have iron, we can't carry oxygen to the cells, or we can't produce hemoglobin, we have decreased oxygen to the cells, okay? So if you have a deficiency in this, we can't produce enough healthy oxygen-carrying red blood cells. So iron deficiencies cause anemia, which means you have too little hemoglobin, and women in their childbearing years are higher risk of iron deficiency because of loss of blood during menstruation. So we could have too much blood causing your body, or too much blood, we have too much iron causing your body to absorb too much, when your body absorbs too much iron from food, what happens is then this excess is stored in your organs, especially your liver, heart, and pancreas, and too much iron can lead to just a lot of life-threatening conditions, and heart problems, and diabetes, and liver disease. Okay. So, because we're hurrying here a little bit, so basically we need about 18 milligrams of iron in our diet a day, okay? And that's for male and females. But this is interesting, we need vitamin C in order to absorb our iron. So if we have vitamin C deficiency, we'll also have iron deficiency in absorption. But if you cook with a metal skillet, you get more iron in your diet because the iron from the skillet actually gets absorbed by your body. So that's kind of an interesting thing to know. Okay. All right, so let's quickly go. We already went through anemia, which just is a decreased hemoglobin and decreased red blood cells. Okay. Yeah, let's skip through this because this is okay. So mineral supplementation. So this goes back to the common theme in the class is just get your nutrients from your food. So yeah, so this taking iron supplements can lead to a lot of toxicity. So think food first. So let's talk about water requirements. So males need about 3.7 liters per day. Females need about 2.7 liters per day. Okay, and this is just under normal environmental conditions. So then we get to water and exercise. Okay, so we need about 2 to 3 cups before, 2 hours before we exercise, and about 1 to 2 cups 15 minutes before exercising. Then during exercise, about 2 to 3 cups. And then, but when we're exercising, typically our body can't absorb enough water to equal our net loss. So we end up losing water and we dehydrate a little bit when we exercise. It's pretty common. So we need to make sure that we take water after we exercise. I think this is pretty common sense that we know. But I didn't know this, cold water absorbs faster. So what is cold water? Between 50 and 72 degrees, it gets absorbed faster into the body. So this is just water intake and water output. Did I skip my slide? This is an interesting, a Boston Marathon runner, and her name is Margaret Bradley, took a trip through the Grand Canyon, did a hike. And she carried 1.5 liters of water, 2 energy bars, and 1 apple, and she died. So by mid-afternoon, the hottest part of the day, the two ran out of water and were severely heat stressed. Margaret's companion could no longer continue, thinking it'd be best for her to go help, and they decided to separate. Their final mistake. Her companion, after resting out of the heat of the day, made it out alive. 2 days later, after beginning their trip, park rangers found Margaret's body. So just an important thing about knowing your conditions and making sure you're hydrated or you have water for the situation. So this is an actual sign in the Grand Canyon that this is a picture of. So sodium, 2 minutes on sodium. Okay, here we go. So where am I going here? So 1 teaspoon contains of sodium, table salt, 2,300 milligrams of sodium, and that's all we should have in a day. At the most, that's what we should have in a day. That's maximum values. But if we look at processed foods have a lot of sodium, so we really need to keep track of our sodium. So we need to, to help this, we need to drain our vegetables. Instead of using salt, use herbs or salt substitutes. Try to eat frozen or fresh vegetables. That's all a better way to keep your sodium levels down. These are examples of sodium here, and it just shows the processed foods have a lot more sodium in them. Okay, just processed, increased sodium levels. And again, this just shows our canned foods and our restaurant foods, fast foods. Look at the sodium levels here in our fast foods. Look at soy sauce, huge. Canned spaghetti, turkey dinner frozen. So just again, processed food, lots of sodium. So, all right, one last thing about sodium and then we'll be good. So sodium is an extracellular ion. What does this mean? So we have intercellular fluid is a liquid located inside the cells, while extracellular fluids around the cells. So intercellular fluids contain proteins and amino acids, and then the extracellular fluid has more ions in it. So there has to be this balance going on all the time. So sodium controls muscle contractions by triggering nerve impulses. So when sodium levels drop, we get more cramping. Also, sodium helps with fluid balance. So this is an important thing, and we'll end on this. Blood pressure. So why does having a lot of sodium in your body, or more sodium in your body, increase your blood pressure? Anybody know the answer to this? What's that?
More fluids will go to dilute the salt, so
Yeah, so it increases our body fluid levels, which then increases the overall pressure in our arteries. So that increases pressurizes our body because we have excess fluid in our body. So, all right, that's it for today. Thursday we'll be meeting in the, I don't know, I'll send you, I think we're going to be meeting over in the music department room that we met day 1. That's where we'll take our exam, I think. Wednesday. I'll send you an email. I'm not sure yet. What's that? Oh, let me check it so I remember.
I'm gonna work, I always spend most of the time, but,
Okay, yep,
Yeah,
I'm gonna, you're good. I'm
Awesome.
checking the right.
What?
practice questions
I
for.
wanted to let you know, I don't actually have to leave here until after Nutrition Feb, so
Okay.
I will be here till the day.
Okay, cool, good.
I watched all the videos. Thank you.
Welcome.
See you tomorrow. Oh, hey, is the quiz and functional tomorrow over just palpations or bones too?
It's just palpation,
Just palpation.
because palpation is basically known as bounce too, so you have to combine them.
Okay, that's what we were kind of thinking, but all of us were a little bit like, we're not sure because we said both a little bit, but.
Yeah, so the quiz I put out there and I sent to all you guys, that is what I'm
Yeah.
covering. So that's
Okay.
it, that's it.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
See you tomorrow.
Okay,